Jack Morrison was just doing his usual morning walk through the forest when he found her. There, lying unconscious among the leaves, was a beautiful woman in a fancy white wedding dress. She looked expensive, from her perfectly manicured nails to the massive diamond ring on her finger. Jack, a single dad who could barely make ends meet on his small farm, knew he had to help. He carried her back to his cabin, wondering who she was and how she ended up here. When she finally woke up, she couldn't remember anything, not her name, not where she came from, not even why she was wearing a wedding dress. What Jack didn't know was that he had just rescued Caroline St. Clair, one of the richest heiresses in the country, who had disappeared on her wedding day, and her story was about to change both their lives forever. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The morning sun hadn't yet risen when Jack's alarm buzzed at 5 a.m. He rolled over in his creaky bed, his hand automatically reaching for Sarah's side, before remembering 3 years on, and he still couldn't break the habit. The worn recipe book on his nightstand caught his eye, its pages dog-eared and stained with years of love and use. Sarah had left him with two treasures, that book full of their shared memories and their beautiful daughter, Emma. "Daddy?" a small voice called. From the doorway, Emma stood there in her favorite unicorn pajamas, her mother's golden hair falling in messy tangles around her face. At 8 years old, she was already showing signs of Sarah's grace and determination. "Hey, sweetheart, you're up early." Jack sat up, patting the bed beside him. Emma climbed up, snuggling into his side. Had the dream again, about Mommy making pancakes. Jack hugged her close, breathing in the sweet strawberry scent of her shampoo. "Tell you what, why don't we make some of her special blueberry pancakes this morning? We've got time before school." Emma's face lit up. "Can I mix the batter, just like Mom taught you?" In the kitchen, Jack pulled out Sarah's recipe book, carefully opening it to the page marked "Family Favorite Blueberry Pancakes." Emma stood on her step-stool, carefully measuring flour into a bowl, while Jack gathered the rest of the ingredients. The morning routine was their special time together, a quiet moment before the day's challenges began. "Remember what Mom always said about measuring?" Jack asked, watching Emma level off the flour with the back of a knife. "Baking is science, cooking is art," Emma recited, her tongue poking out in concentration. "But pancakes are both." The familiar words brought a smile to Jack's face. Sarah had been the one who made this old farmhouse feel like home, filling it with the scents of fresh-baked bread and the sound of laughter. Now, he and Emma kept those memories alive through little rituals like this. As they worked, the kitchen windows slowly brightened with dawn's approach. Outside, their small farm was coming to life. Chickens clucked in their coop, waiting for breakfast. The ancient tractor sat in the barn, needing repairs Jack couldn't afford. Bills piled up on the counter, each one a reminder of how precarious their situation had become. But Emma didn't need to know about those worries. Not yet. For now, she could just be a little girl making pancakes with her dad. "Perfect flip!" Emma cheered as Jack sent a pancake spinning in the air. It landed with a satisfying sizzle, golden brown, and ready for the growing stack. They sat at the old wooden table, morning sun streaming through windows that needed washing. Emma drowned her pancakes in maple syrup, while Jack sipped his coffee, going over the day's tasks in his mind. Fix the chicken coop's roof. Check the events line. Try to make sense of the farm's books and somehow find a way to make next month's mortgage payment. "Daddy," Emma's voice pulled him from his thoughts. "Can we plant more blueberries this year? For the pancakes?" Jack looked at his daughter's hopeful face and made himself smile. "We'll see, sweetheart. First, we need to get you ready for school." The morning routine continued, brushing teeth, taming hair, finding missing homework. Jack packed Emma's lunch, peanut butter and honey just like Sarah used to make. While she pulled on her boots, they were hand-me-downs from a neighbor's kid, but Emma had decorated them with sparkly stickers to make them her own. "Got everything?" Jack asked as they headed for his old pickup truck. Emma patted her backpack. Science project, lunch, library book. Oh, almost forgot. She ran back inside, returning with a slightly wrinkled paper. It's Parent Career Day next week. Mrs. Thompson needs this signed. Jack's heart sank as he read the form. Another school event where Emma would have to explain why her mum couldn't come. Another reminder of all the ways he was struggling to fill both roles. The drive to school was quiet, both lost in thought as they bumped along country roads. Parents in shiny SUVs dropped off their kids, mums in yoga pants chatting in groups by the entrance. Jack's truck stuck out like a sore thumb, but Emma never seemed to mind. "Have a great day, sweetie," he said as she hopped out. "Mrs. Chen will pick you up for your piano lesson after school." "Love you, Daddy," Emma waved before running to join her friends. Jack watched until she disappeared inside, then headed back to the farm. The morning's peaceful moments faded as reality set in. The bank statement on his desk showed numbers that kept getting smaller. The letter from the mortgage company used words like foreclosure and final notice. In the kitchen, he picked up Sarah's recipe book again, running his fingers over her. Familiar handwriting. "I'm trying, honey," he whispered, "but I don't know how much longer I can keep this going." The morning forest walk was his way of clearing his head, of finding solutions in the quiet of nature. He had no way of knowing that today's walk would lead him to someone who would change everything. But for now, he grabbed his work gloves and headed to the barn. The farm wouldn't work itself, and there were still bills to pay, fences to mend, and dreams to keep alive for a little girl who deserved so much more than he could give her. The woman stirred just as Jack was reaching for his phone to call the local clinic. Her eyelids fluttered, and a small moan escaped her lips. She lay on his couch, her once pristine wedding dress now dirty and torn, the delicate lace edging snagged, with twigs and leaves. "Easy now," Jack said softly as her eyes opened. They were a striking shade of green, clouded with confusion. "You're safe." She tried to sit up, then winced, her hand going to the bruise on her temple. "Where?" Her voice was raspy, cultured even in its weakness. "My farm, just outside Cedar Grove. I found you in the woods." Jack stayed where he was, not wanting to frighten her. "I'm Jack Morrison. Can you tell me your name?" The woman's brow furrowed in concentration. Her hand touched the wedding dress, then moved to the enormous diamond ring on her finger. Fear flickered across her face. I don't know." On the coffee table beside them lay the broken compass he'd found in her dress pocket. Its gold surface was scratched, the needle spinning uselessly. Like its owner, it seemed lost and damaged. "It's okay," Jack assured her, though it was anything but okay. "Do you remember anything, how you got here?" She shook her head slowly, tears welling in her eyes. "Everything's fuzzy, just fragments running through trees, being scared." She looked down at her dress again. "I was getting married?" Before Jack could respond, the front door burst open and Emma bounced in, back from her piano lesson. She stopped short at the sight of the woman on their couch. "Daddy, is she a princess?" The woman's laugh was surprised and genuine, though tears still shone in her eyes. "I don't think so, sweetheart, though I wish I knew for sure." Emma approached cautiously, studying their guest. "Your dress is like the one from my fairy tale book, but it's all dirty now." "Emma," Jack said gently, "our guest had an accident in the woods. She can't remember who she is right now, so we need to help her feel safe while she gets better, okay?" Emma's face lit up with purpose. "I can help. I'll get her some of Mummy's old clothes. They're in the boxes in the attic." Before Jack could stop her, Emma had dashed upstairs, her footsteps thundering on the old wooden floors. "She's wonderful," the woman said softly. "How old is she?" 8. And yeah, she is. Jack's voice held pride mixed with caution. "Listen, I should probably call the police or the hospital." "No!" The force of her response surprised them both. She took a shaky breath. "I mean, please. Not yet. I have this feeling that it wouldn't be safe." Jack studied her face. Despite the amnesia, There was intelligence in those green eyes, and something else, genuine fear. His protective instincts, already on high alert from raising Emma alone, kicked in. "Okay," he said slowly, "but if that bruise gets worse or you start feeling dizzy, we're going to have to get you checked out," Emma returned, struggling under the weight of a cardboard box. "Found them. Mommy's clothes were packed away, but they're really pretty." A shadow crossed the woman's face. "Your mommy? I'm so sorry. I don't mean to intrude." "It's okay," Emma said brightly. "She's in heaven now, but she'd want to help you. She always helped people." Jack cleared his throat against the sudden tightness. "Emma, honey, why don't you help our guest find something comfortable to wear? I'll make some tea." In the kitchen, Jack could hear Emma chattering away, telling their mysterious guest about her school project and her piano lessons. The woman's responses were gentle and engaged, drawing the little girl out with seemingly natural ease. Jack's hand shook slightly as he filled the kettle. What was he doing? Harboring a possibly injured woman who might be running from something dangerous, letting her interact with his daughter. But there was something about her, a genuineness that shone through the confusion and fear. When he returned with the tea, the woman was wearing a simple blue dress that had been one of Sarah's favorites. She'd cleaned her face, though the bruise stood out starkly against her pale skin. The wedding dress lay carefully folded on the couch, the diamond ring placed on top. "I thought I should take it off," she explained, seeing his glance at the ring. "It feels wrong somehow, like it belongs to someone else." Emma sat cross-legged on the floor, looking through her fairy tale book. "Maybe you're like Cinderella in reverse. Instead of going to the ball, you ran away from one." The woman smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Maybe. I just wish I knew why." Jack set down the tea tray. "You can stay here tonight at least. Until we figure things out. We have a spare room, but tomorrow we need to start looking for answers." "Thank you," she said softly. "Both of you. I know this is strange. Sometimes strange things happen for a reason," Emma declared with 8-year-old wisdom. "That's what Mommy always said." As the evening settled around them, Jack watched their mysterious guest interact with Emma, helping her with homework and listening to her practice piano. Despite his misgivings, he couldn't shake the feeling that Emma was right. Finding this woman felt like more than just chance. But as he looked at the wedding dress, the expensive ring, and thought about the resources someone would need to search for a missing bride, he wondered what kind of trouble he might be bringing to their quiet life, and more importantly, what kind of trouble she might be running from. The Cedar Grove General Store hadn't changed much in the 30 years Jack had been coming here. The bell above the door still announced every customer with the same cheery ring, and old Joe Miller still stocked the same brands his father had favored. But today, something was different. The usual morning quiet was broken by excited chatter around the store's small coffee counter. "Did you see the news?" Mary Chen, Emma's piano teacher, waved a newspaper as Jack entered. "Some millionaire's daughter went missing from her own wedding, right in the next county." Jack's heart skipped a beat, but he kept his face neutral as he picked up a basket. They needed supplies for their guest. Basic toiletries, some fresh clothes, things he hadn't thought about in the rush of yesterday's events. "Whole thing sounds fishy, if you ask me," Joe commented from behind the counter. "Who runs away from that kind of money? Says here the St. Clair family's worth billions." Jack pretended to study the toothbrush selection while his mind raced. St. Clair. The name meant something. They owned half the real estate in the state, their name plastered on office buildings and charitable foundations. "Poor thing," Mary sighed, spreading the newspaper on the counter. "Look at her picture. Such a beautiful bride." Jack glanced over, and his blood ran cold. There on the front page was their mysterious guest, looking polished and perfect in what must have been an engagement photo. "Caroline St. Clair disappears on wedding day," screamed the headline. "Families offering a reward," Joe added. $250,000 just for information leading to finding her. Can you imagine? The toothbrush in Jack's hand suddenly felt very heavy. $250,000 could save his farm, secure Emma's future, solve all their problems. Makes you wonder what she was running from, Mary mused. Paper says she was marrying some hotshot businessman, Bradley Thompson III. Family dynasties joining forces and all that. Speaking of family, Joe turned to Jack. How's little Emma doing with her piano lessons, Mary? Oh, she's wonderful, Mary beamed. Such a natural talent. You know, Jack, there's a scholarship program for advanced students. Emma could qualify. Jack let their conversation wash over him, adding items to his basket on autopilot. His mind was back at the farm, where Caroline St. Clair, if that was really her, was probably helping Emma get ready for school, just as she had yesterday, looking so natural in Sarah's old blue dress. Jack, you okay there, son? Joe's voice snapped him back to present. You're looking a bit peaked. Just tired. Jack managed to smile. Lot of work on the farm lately. Mary touched his arm sympathetically. You know, my brother's construction company is always hiring. Good benefits too. If you're thinking of selling, the farm's not for sale, Jack said, perhaps too quickly. But thanks, Mary. I appreciate the thought. He paid for his supplies. The newspaper still spread on the counter, catching his eye. Caroline's smile in the photo looked perfect, practiced. Nothing like the genuine warmth she'd shown while helping Emma with her homework. Outside, more townspeople were gathered, all discussing the mysterious disappearance. Jack heard fragments as he walked to his truck. Wedding was supposed to cost millions. Private investigators all over the county. Families. Got connections in high places. The implications were becoming clear. This wasn't just about a missing bride anymore. There was serious money and power involved, the kind that could bring unwanted attention to their quiet town. Jack's truck radio crackled with a news update as he drove home. Continuing the search for Caroline St. Clair, the Thompson family spokesperson expressed concern for their future daughter-in-law's safety, citing possible foul play. He switched it off, knuckles white on the steering wheel. The woman he'd found hadn't seemed like a victim of foul play. She'd seemed like someone running for her life. The farm came into view, morning sun glinting off the old windmill. Through the kitchen window, he could see two figures, one tall, one small, working together at the counter. The scene was so domestic, so natural, it made his chest ache. Emma's words from yesterday echoed in his mind. Sometimes strange things happen for a reason. But as Jack parked the truck and gathered his supplies, he couldn't help wondering if this particular strange thing might end up destroying the simple life he'd worked so hard to build. Money had a way of complicating everything it touched, and Caroline St. Clair represented more money than he could imagine. The screen door creaked as he entered the kitchen. Emma and their guest, Caroline, he corrected mentally, were making sandwiches, flour on their cheeks and laughter in their eyes. "Daddy," Emma called, "we're making lunch. And guess what? She remembered she knows how to bake. We're going to make cookies later." Caroline looked up, her smile genuine and warm, nothing like the polished pose in the newspaper. For a moment, Jack hesitated. Then he set down his bags and forced a smile. "Sounds great, sweetheart, but first, I think we need to have a talk." The shadow that crossed Caroline's face suggested that maybe, somewhere deep down, she knew exactly who she was, and more importantly, what she was running from. The afternoon sun streamed through the kitchen window as Caroline stared at the newspaper spread on the table. Her own face smiled back at her. A stranger's face, really, with its perfect makeup and practiced pose. Emma sat beside her, crayon in hand, absently drawing in her sketchbook while the adults talked. "So I'm rich?" Caroline's voice was small, uncertain. She touched the newspaper photo lightly. "This doesn't feel real." "Caroline St. Clair," Jack said gently, "heiress to the St. Clair Development Corporation. You were supposed to marry Bradley Thompson III 3 days ago." Emma looked up from her drawing, a colorful scene of 3 people and a farm. "Is that why you ran away? Because you didn't love him?" "Emma," Jack warned. But Caroline shook her head. It's a fair question. She closed her eyes, concentrating. I still can't remember clearly, but when I think about that name, Bradley, I feel scared. Not loved. Shouldn't a bride feel love? Emma nodded sagely, adding more details to her picture. In my fairy tales, the princess always marries for love. Jack watched as Caroline's hands trembled slightly. Without thinking, he reached across the table and steadied them with his own. Her skin was soft against his calloused palm, and for a moment neither of them moved. You don't have to figure everything out right now, he said, but people are looking for you, powerful people. Can't she stay with us? Emma asked, pushing her completed drawing forward. In bright crayon colors, she'd depicted Caroline, Jack and herself in front of the farmhouse, surrounded by flowers and happy animals. Look, I drew us as a family. Caroline's eyes filled with tears as she studied the picture. Oh, Emma, it's beautiful. Jack felt his throat tighten. He hadn't seen Emma draw a family picture, a complete family, since Sarah died. But here they were, rendered in waxy primary colors, all holding hands and smiling. Tell you what, Caroline said, wiping her eyes, why don't I help you with your chores today? If I'm staying, even for a little while, I should learn how things work around here. Emma bounced in her seat. Can she help me feed the chickens, Daddy? Please? Jack couldn't help but smile at his daughter's enthusiasm. All right, but show her the proper way. Those hens can be mighty particular. The scene that followed would have shocked the society pages. Caroline Sinclair, worth millions on paper, traded Sarah's blue dress for a pair of old overalls and rubber boots. She followed Emma's expert instruction on chicken feeding, laughing as the birds pecked around her feet. You have to scatter it wide, Emma demonstrated, so everybody gets some. Even Henrietta, she's kind of old and slow. Caroline's natural grace turned out to be an advantage with the skittish hens. Like this. She spread the feed in a graceful arc, and the chickens clucked appreciatively. Jack watched from the barn doorway as he fixed a broken tractor part. Caroline's genuine delight in the simple task, her careful attention to Emma's every word. It all felt so right, and that scared him more than any newspaper headline. The rest of the day unfolded in similar scenes. Caroline insisted on helping with every chore, from weeding the vegetable garden to helping Emma with her homework. Her expensive manicure suffered, but her smile grew more real with every passing hour. I think I like physical work, she said as they prepared dinner together. It feels honest, like I'm actually accomplishing something real. Emma sat at the kitchen table, working on another drawing. This one showed Caroline in her wedding dress, but instead of looking scared, cartoon Caroline was smiling and holding a pitchfork like the farmer in that famous painting. You're really good at drawing, Emma, Caroline observed, peeling potatoes with newfound skill. Does your school have an art program? A shadow crossed Jack's face as he set the table. They cut it last year. Budget issues. That's terrible. Art is so important for... Caroline trailed off, a strange look crossing her face. I think I used to teach art to children before what? Emma asked eagerly. I can't remember exactly, but I have this feeling, being in a bright room with children's artwork everywhere, being happy. Jack watched as Emma scooted, her chair closer to Caroline, showing her more drawings from her sketchbook. The easy affection between them made his heart ache. Emma hadn't bonded with anyone like this since Sarah. Later that night, after Emma was in bed, Jack found Caroline sitting on the porch swing, staring at the stars. She'd washed her face clean of any remaining makeup, and her hair fell in natural waves instead of the elegant style from the newspaper photo. Thank you, she said as he sat beside her, for not turning me in. You heard what they're offering for information? She tensed slightly. The reward? No. How much? $250,000? Caroline was quiet for a long moment. That would solve your problems with the farm, wouldn't it? It's not about the money. Jack surprised himself with the firmness of his conviction. Emma trusts you. I trust you. Money's not worth betraying that. The porch swing creaked gently as they sat in comfortable silence. Somewhere in the distance, an owl called. "I don't remember who I was," Caroline finally said, "but I think I like who I'm becoming here more than whoever I was in that newspaper photo." Jack looked at her profile in the moonlight. Smudges of dirt still on her cheek from gardening, a small scratch from the chicken coop, and the most genuine smile he'd seen since Sarah. "Yeah," he said softly, "I think I like this version better too." The nightmare struck just before dawn. Caroline woke with a strangled cry, her heart pounding against her ribs. In her dream, a man in an expensive suit had been chasing her through endless corridors, his footsteps echoing like gunshots. Her hand went instinctively to her wrist, seeking something that wasn't there. The motion triggered a flash of memory, a silver bracelet, a gift. She could almost see the engraving, "Forever yours, B." The rest remained stubbornly out of reach, but the sense of dread lingered. Sunlight was just beginning to creep through the curtains of the guest room, Sarah's old room, though no one said it aloud. Caroline got up, wrapping herself in the quilt Emma had insisted on giving her. "It keeps the bad dreams away," the little girl had promised. In the kitchen she found Jack already awake, staring into a cup of coffee. "You too?" she asked softly. He looked up, concern crossing his face when he saw her expression. "Bad dream. Memory, I think, or pieces of one." She sat across from him, running her fingers over the worn kitchen table. There was a bracelet, silver, with an engraving. "From him, from Bradley." Jack pushed his coffee aside. "Do you remember what it said? Forever yours, like a promise or a threat?" Caroline shivered despite the quilt. "Jack, I think I was afraid of him." Before Jack could respond, rapid footsteps announced Emma's arrival. She burst into the kitchen with the energy only 8-year-olds possess at dawn. "Caroline, can you help me with my art project? It's due today, and I want it to be perfect." The tension broke as Caroline smiled. "Of course, sweetheart. What are we making?" Emma pulled out a half-finished collage from her backpack. "It's supposed to be about family traditions. See? I put in pictures of Daddy and me making Mum's pancakes and the farm. And now I want to add you teaching me about the chickens." Caroline's hands froze over the artwork. "Emma, honey, I don't know if you should include me. What if your teacher asks questions?" "But you are family now," Emma insisted with a child's simple logic. "You make Daddy smile like in the old pictures with Mom." Jack nearly choked on his coffee. Caroline felt her cheeks flush as their eyes met briefly across the table. "Emma," Jack started, but another memory hit Caroline like a thunderbolt. "Art therapy," she gasped. "I remember I worked with children, using art to help them express difficult feelings. That's why he—" Her head spun as more fragments surfaced. An argument in a luxurious office. Bradley's voice cold with anger. "A St. Clair does not work with common children. You'll embarrass the family name." "Caroline?" Jack's voice brought her back. He had moved to her side, one hand steady on her shoulder. "Stay with us. You're safe here." Emma had crawled into her lap, small arms wrapped around her neck. "Don't be scared. Daddy always says we're stronger together." Caroline hugged Emma close, breathing in the child's familiar scent of strawberry shampoo and crayon wax. "I remember loving my work, helping children process trauma through art. But Bradley, the family, they thought it was beneath me." "That's stupid," Emma declared. "Art is important. You said so yourself." A laugh bubbled up through Caroline's tears. "Yes, I didn't I?" Jack squeezed her shoulder gently. "Each memory is a piece of the puzzle. No pressure to figure it all out at once." But Caroline could feel the urgency building. More memories were surfacing, heated arguments about her career, about her choices, about who she was allowed to be. The bracelet had been Bradley's way of marking his territory, not a token of love. "I think," she said slowly, "I remember why. I ran. Bradley wanted to control everything, my work, my future, who I could help. The wedding wasn't about love, it was about merging family empires." Emma slid off her lap and returned to her art project, adding details with fierce concentration. After a moment, she held up the collage. In the center, she'd drawn a new picture. Caroline teaching a group of children surrounded by colorful artwork. "There," Emma said proudly. "Now it shows who you really are." Caroline stared at the child's drawing, feeling tears well up again. Here was her true self, seen through the eyes of an 8-year-old who had known her for less than a week. Not the polished heiress from the society pages, but a teacher, a helper, someone who brought art and healing to children who needed it. Jack cleared his throat. "Emma, honey, we still need to be careful. Not everyone understands like you do." "I know," Emma sighed. "It's like a secret mission, protecting Caroline until she remembers everything." But as Caroline helped Emma finish her project, she couldn't shake the feeling that remembering everything might be exactly what would tear this newfound happiness apart. The bracelet in her memory gleamed like a handcuff, and somewhere out there, Bradley Thompson III was still looking for his runaway bride. Black SUVs with tinted windows weren't a common sight in Cedar Grove, so when 3 of them rolled down Main Street, everyone noticed. They parked in front of Joe's General Store, and men in expensive suits stepped out, their polished shoes incongruous. On the dusty sidewalk, Jack watched from his truck, heart pounding, as they posted flyers on every storefront. The reward for information about Caroline had doubled to $500,000. Her photo smiled from every window, every telephone. "Paul, looking for information about Caroline St. Clair," one man announced, handing out business cards. "Private investigators working for the Thompson family. Complete confidentiality assured." Mary Chen caught Jack's eye from her music store doorway, her expression worried. She'd been asking questions about his mysterious houseguest, questions he'd carefully deflected. Inside Joe's store, Jack could hear one of the investigators questioning the old man. "Any strangers in town recently? Anyone matching her description?" "Folks pass through sometimes." Joe's voice was carefully neutral. "Don't pay much attention unless they're buying something." Jack grabbed his supplies quickly, keeping his head down. But as he turned to leave, he nearly collided with one of the investigators, a sharp-featured man with cold eyes. "Sorry about that," Jack mumbled. "No problem." The man's gaze was calculating. "Say, you're local, right? Jack Morrison, isn't it? The farmer with the little girl?" Jack's blood ran cold. They'd done their homework. "That's right. Must be hard running a farm alone. Raising a kid on your own." The man pulled out a business card. "If you hear anything about Miss St. Clair, well, $500,000 could change a lot of lives." Jack took the card automatically, his fingers numb. "I'll keep that in mind." Back at the farm, he found Caroline and Emma in the garden, harvesting tomatoes. The domestic scene nearly broke his heart. Caroline in old jeans and a faded t-shirt, dirt on her knees, showing Emma how to tell when the tomatoes were perfectly ripe. "Jack?" Caroline's smile faded when she saw his expression. "What's wrong?" He waited until Emma was out of earshot, taking their harvest to the kitchen. "They're here. Private investigators. The reward's up to $500,000 now." Caroline's face went pale. She sat heavily on the garden bench, a tomato falling forgotten from her hand. "They won't stop looking, will they?" "No." Jack sat beside her. "And they know about me, about Emma. They've done their research." "I should go," Caroline whispered. "I'm putting you both in danger." "No!" Emma's voice made them both jump. She stood in the garden doorway, eyes wide. "You can't leave. You're family now." Caroline opened her arms, and Emma ran into them, burying her face in Caroline's shoulder. "Oh, sweetheart." "Emma's right," Jack said quietly. "Running isn't the answer. We just need to be careful." But careful wasn't enough. That evening, while Caroline helped Emma with her homework, Jack's phone rang. Mary Chen's number. "Jack," her voice was urgent. "Those investigators were asking about you specifically. About changes in your routine, about Emma mentioning any visitors. I didn't say anything, but—" "Jack, what's going on?" He closed his eyes. Mary was a friend. Had been since Sarah died, but this was too dangerous to share. Thanks for the warning, Mary. Jack, wait! She hesitated. Is she there? The missing bride? Before he could answer, a scream came from inside the house. Jack dropped the phone, running inside to find Caroline backed against the wall, staring at the TV. Emma had been watching her favorite cartoon, but a news bulletin had cut in. New developments in the Caroline Sinclair disappearance. Bradley Thompson III, her fiancé, has offered an additional reward for information leading to her safe return. Mr. Thompson expressed deep concern for his fiancée's mental state, revealing that she had been under psychiatric care. That's a lie. Caroline's voice shook with anger and fear. He's trying to discredit me, make it look like I'm unstable. Jack turned off the TV, but the damage was done. Emma looked between them, her lower lip trembling. Is the bad man going to take Caroline away? The question hung in the air, heavy with implications. Jack moved to Caroline's side, taking her trembling hand in his. The touch seemed to steady her. "No," he said firmly. "Nobody's taking anybody away." Their eyes met, and suddenly the space between them felt charged with electricity. Without thinking, Jack leaned forward. Caroline's free hand came up to touch his cheek, and their lips met in a kiss that felt like coming home. Emma's delighted giggle broke the moment. They pulled. Apart, both blushing, but their hands remained linked. "See?" Emma said triumphantly. "Now you have to stay. Daddy only kisses people he loves, like he used to kiss Mommy." Outside, a car drove slowly past the farm, its headlights sweeping across the windows. Caroline tensed, but Jack pulled her. "Closer. We'll figure this out," he promised. "Together." But as night fell over the farm, more cars drove past, their occupants watching, waiting. The net was tightening, and time was running out. Caroline couldn't sleep. The moonlight, filtering through her window, cast shadows that seemed to move like watching figures. On her nightstand lay an old photo album Emma had discovered in the attic, filled with Morrison family memories. But it was another photo occupying her thoughts tonight. She'd found it crushed in the pocket of her wedding dress, a faded picture of a much younger Caroline standing with her family in front of their mansion. She looked maybe 16, her smile stiff and practiced. Her father's hand rested heavily on her shoulder, her mother's perfect posture speaking volumes about expectations and appearances. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. "Can't sleep either." Jack's voice was quiet. "Come in," she whispered. He entered carrying 2 mugs of tea. The familiar scent of chamomile filled the room as he sat on the edge of her bed. "Emma finally dozed off," he said. "She was worried about you." Caroline touched the old photograph. "I remember more now, about my family, about Bradley. It's like watching a movie about someone else's life." Jack studied the photo. "Tell me." "My father built the Sinclair empire from nothing. He was obsessed with legacy, with appearances. Mother was the perfect corporate wife. Charity galas, society events, everything just so." Caroline's voice grew bitter. "I was their project, the perfect daughter to cement their social position. But you wanted something different. I loved art, teaching, making a real difference in children's lives." She closed her eyes, memories flooding back. "I had a program at the community center working with kids from troubled homes. Bradley, he said it was embarrassing, that a Sinclair shouldn't be playing with finger paints in the slums." Jack's hand found hers in the darkness. "What happened?" "They threatened to shut down the program, said they'd withdraw all funding from the center unless I came to my senses. Bradley presented it as concern for my well-being, but it was control. Always control." She pulled another photo from the dress pocket, this one showing her with a group of children, their artwork displayed proudly behind them. Their smiles were genuine, unposed. The marriage was a business merger, nothing more. The Sinclair and Thompson empires combining forces. Her voice shook. "The night before the wedding, I overheard Bradley and my father discussing their plans. They were going to announce my nervous breakdown after the honeymoon, have me committed until I became compliant." "My God," Jack breathed. "I ran, grabbed my wedding dress, took my grandmother's compass, the only family heirloom that meant anything real to me, and just ran. She touched the bruise on her temple, nearly healed now. I must have fallen in the woods. The rest, you know. Jack set his tea aside and gathered her into his arms. She went willingly, breathing in his familiar scent of soap and fresh air. The woman in that society photo, she murmured against his chest. She wasn't real. This, who I am with you and Emma, this is real. I know, he said softly. Then, I think I'm falling in love with you. Caroline lifted her head, meeting his eyes in the moonlight. I think I already have. Their kiss was different from their first, slower, deeper, full of promise and understanding. When they parted, Caroline rested her forehead against his. What are we going to do? She whispered. They'll never stop looking. We'll figure it out. The whole town's behind you now. Even Mary's stopped asking questions. Joe's been sending investigators on wild goose chases up and down the county. A floorboard creaked, and they looked up to find Emma in the doorway, clutching her. Stuffed rabbit. Had a bad dream, she said, but her worried expression suggested she'd heard more than they realized. Come here, sweetheart. Caroline opened her arms. Emma climbed onto the bed, settling between them. Why are rich people mean? Emma asked suddenly. Why don't they want you to help kids? Jack and Caroline exchanged looks over her head. Sometimes, Caroline said carefully, people forget what's really important. They think money and power matter more than love and kindness. That's dumb, Emma declared. You're the best art teacher ever. Those kids were lucky to have you. Caroline's eyes filled with tears as she hugged Emma closer. No, honey, I'm the lucky one. I found you and your dad. But later, after Emma had fallen asleep between them and Jack had carried her back to her own bed, Caroline stood at the window watching the road. More cars had driven past tonight, their headlights sweeping the farmhouse like searchlights. The life she'd run from was closing in. The only question was, could their love survive what was coming? The wedding invitation arrived in a thick cream envelope, delivered to Joe's store, along with missing person flyers. Its gold embossing caught the morning light. You are cordially invited to celebrate the union of Caroline Elizabeth St. Clair and Bradley Thompson III. Joe brought it straight to the farm, his old truck kicking up dust on the long driveway. Thought you should see this, he said, handing the envelope to Jack. They're plastering these all over town now, too. Caroline sat at the kitchen table, staring at the invitation. The paper felt expensive under her fingers, the elaborate calligraphy announcing a celebration that should have happened 2 weeks ago. There's more, Joe said grimly. Bradley Thompson himself is coming to town, says he's leading a personal search for his beloved fiancée. Jack's hand tightened on Caroline's shoulder. When? Tomorrow, bringing a whole media circus with him. The RGA invitation trembled in Caroline's hands. Memories crashed over her like waves, Bradley adjusting her posture at charity events, criticizing her choice of friends, his cold voice explaining how she would give up her little hobby of teaching. After the wedding, I remember the day this was printed, she said quietly. Bradley insisted on approving every detail. The font, the paperweight, even the shade of gold ink. I felt like I was drowning in decisions that weren't really mine to make. Emma, who had been quietly drawing at her small art desk in the corner, brought over her latest picture. It showed Caroline in the wedding dress, but she was running away from a dark figure toward a bright farmhouse where Jack and Emma waited. You chose us instead, Emma said simply. That's better than some fancy party. Caroline pulled Emma into a tight hug, meeting Jack's eyes over the child's head. They'd known this moment would come, but facing it was another matter entirely. I need to tell you everything, Caroline said. About the night I ran away. She took a deep breath, memories crystallizing with sudden clarity. It was the rehearsal dinner. Everyone who mattered was there. The St. Clairs, the Thompsons, all their powerful friends. I overheard Bradley talking to my father in the library. Flashback. The library's heavy doors hadn't quite closed, leaving a crack through which Caroline could hear male voices. The psychiatric facility is very discreet, Bradley was saying. After the honeymoon, we'll announce Caroline's unfortunate breakdown. A few months of treatment should correct her inappropriate interests. Her father's laugh was cold. Always thinking ahead, Bradley. This is why our families work so well together. Caroline just needs a firm hand. This nonsense about teaching art to underprivileged children, it's embarrassing. Once we're married, that all stops. The merger of our companies requires a proper corporate wife, not some bleeding heart. Social worker, present. I ran upstairs, grabbed my grandmother's compass, the only thing I had from her that they hadn't controlled, and my wedding dress. It was worth a fortune. I thought I could sell it if I needed money. Caroline's voice shook. I took the service stairs down to the garage, but Bradley's security chief saw me. There was a struggle. That's probably how I hit my head. The rest is blur until Jack found me. Joe let out a low whistle. That's something the papers aren't printing. Bradley's been spreading stories about my mental health, Caroline continued, making it look like I'm unstable, unfit to make my own decisions. Once we're married, he'll have legal control over everything. My inheritance, my medical decisions. My whole life. Jack paced the kitchen, his face dark with anger. We won't let that happen. But what can we do? Caroline asked. He's got money, lawyers, the media. All I have is the truth. And who's going to believe a mentally unstable runaway bride over Bradley Thompson III? Emma tugged at Caroline's sleeve. Show them your art kids, the ones you helped. They know the real you. Caroline stared at the little girl, a plan slowly forming. Emma, you're brilliant. She turned to Joe. The community center where I taught, I had a whole file of success stories. Children who made breakthrough progress through art therapy, documentation, parent testimonials, everything. And Bradley doesn't know about these files? Jack asked. There, in my private office at the center. He never bothered to visit. It was beneath him. Caroline's voice grew stronger. If we could get those files, show the media the real work I was doing. I've got a cousin works security at that center, Joe offered. Might be able to help us get in quietly. But before they could discuss it further, the sound of cars on the gravel driveway made them freeze. Through the kitchen window, they could see 3 black SUVs approaching. Back door, Jack said quickly. Joe, take them out through the fields. I'll handle this. No. Caroline stood, squaring her shoulders. No more running. Emma's right. The truth is all I have, but maybe it's enough. She walked to the front door, just as heavy knocks echoed through the house. Jack moved to her side, taking her hand. Emma slipped her small hand into Caroline's other one. Joe positioned himself behind them, a solid presence of small-town solidarity. Against big city power. Caroline took a deep breath and opened the door to face her past. The foreclosure notice lay on Jack's desk like a ticking bomb. Final warning blazed across the top in angry red letters, the amount due far more than he could hope to gather. Outside his study window, he could see Caroline and Emma in the garden, their heads bent together over the tomato plants, peaceful despite the morning's confrontation with Bradley's advance team. The investigators hadn't stayed long. Caroline's quiet dignity and the united front of small-town solidarity had thrown them off balance. But they'd left with a clear message. Bradley himself would arrive tomorrow, backed by media crews and lawyers. Daddy? Emma's voice pulled him from his thoughts. She stood in the doorway, dirt on her knees, concern in her young eyes. Are you doing money papers again? Jack quickly covered the foreclosure notice. Just boring grown-up stuff, sweetheart. But Emma was too perceptive for her age. Is it about the farm? Caroline says we might be able to sell some of our vegetables at the farmer's market. That's a good idea, but... Jack trailed off as Caroline appeared behind Emma. But it won't be enough, will it? Caroline asked softly. She'd noticed the edge of the red warning letter. Jack, let me help. I have resources. No. Jack's voice was firm. Bradley's lawyers are watching every financial transaction. The moment you access your accounts, they'll know exactly where you are. Caroline entered the study, picking up the notice before Jack could stop her. Her face paled as she read the numbers. "This is my fault. If I hadn't brought all this trouble to your door." "Stop," Jack stood, taking the paper from her hands. "You're not responsible for this. The farm's been struggling since before Sarah died. I kept thinking I could turn it around." Emma climbed onto his lap, her small face serious. "We can't lose the farm, Daddy. It's our home. It's Caroline's home now, too." A cough from the doorway made them all turn. Mary Chen stood there, looking uncomfortable. "Sorry to interrupt." Door was open. "Mary," Jack straightened. "What brings you out here?" She twisted her hands together. "Those men, the investigators, they're offering money for information. A lot of money. And, Jack, they're asking about Emma's piano lessons. About any changes in her behavior or things she might have said." The implications hung heavy in the air. Mary was their friend, had been since Sarah's death, but $500,000 was life-changing money. Caroline stood. "Mary, I understand if you need to—" "No, you don't understand." Mary stepped forward. "I came to warn you, and to help if I can. Sarah was my best friend, and I haven't seen Jack smile like he does with you since she died. Haven't seen Emma so happy either." Relief flooded Jack's face. "Mary, thank you." "Don't thank me yet." Mary's expression was grim. "There's something else. Emma's piano scholarship application, it was approved. Full ride to the conservatory's youth program." Emma's eyes lit up. "Really? I got in." "But," Jack prompted, hearing it in Mary's voice, "but the conservatory just received a massive donation from the Thompson Foundation. They're renaming the youth wing after Bradley's mother." Caroline sank into a chair. "He's cutting off our options. The farm, Emma's future. He wants us desperate." Jack looked at the foreclosure notice again, mental calculations running. Even if he sold everything, liquidated Sarah's life insurance, took every odd job in the county. "I won't let him win," Caroline said suddenly. Her voice had a new strength. "To it. There's another way." She walked to the window, looking out over the farm that had become her sanctuary. "The community center where I taught. I didn't just keep files on the children's progress. I documented everything. The threats from Bradley and my father, the plans to have me committed. I knew someday I'd need proof. But accessing those files would be dangerous," Jack protested. "Sometimes you have to risk everything to save what matters." Caroline turned back to them, her face set with determination. "Mary, how many of Sarah's old friends are still in town? People we can trust?" "Most of them. Why?" "Because we're going to need help. And because Bradley Thompson III is about to learn that small towns protect their own." Emma slid off Jack's lap and took Caroline's hand. "Like in my stories, where the whole village helps the princess escape the evil king." Caroline knelt to Emma's level. "Exactly like that, but first," she looked at Jack, "we need to talk about this farm and about what family really means." Jack met her eyes, understanding dawning. "Caroline, no. It's too much of a risk." "Well," said Joe's voice from the hallway, making them all jump. The old shopkeeper stepped into view, a glint in his eye. "Good thing she's not taking that risk. Alone, isn't it?" The foreclosure notice on the desk seemed less threatening somehow, surrounded by people who understood that some things were worth more than money. The hard choices ahead would be easier faced together. It started with a single photo on social media. Someone at the local diner had snapped a picture of Caroline helping Emma with her homework, their heads bent together over a math worksheet. The caption read, "Found, missing millionaire bride. Caroline St. Clair, living simple life in Cedar Grove." The post went viral within hours. Jack discovered it when his phone started buzzing non-stop with notifications. Mary had forwarded him the link, along with a warning, "They're coming, news vans already on the highway." He found Caroline in the kitchen, already watching the story unfold on the small TV they kept on the counter. Her face was everywhere. The official engagement photo next to the casual snapshot from the diner, side by side, in a stark contrast of her two lives. "Breaking news," the anchor announced. Runaway bride Caroline St. Clair has been located in the small farming town of Cedar Grove, apparently living with local farmer Jack Morrison and his young daughter. Sources say... Caroline muted the TV, her hands shaking. They're making it sound tawdry, like I'm having some kind of breakdown, playing house in the countryside. Before Jack could respond, Emma burst through the door, tears streaming down her face. Everyone at school was talking about us. Molly showed me the picture on her phone and said, Caroline's going to leave us for her rich family. Caroline gathered Emma into her arms. Oh, sweetheart, no, that's not... A car door slammed outside. Through the window they could see a news. A van parking on their gravel driveway, a reporter and cameraman already hurrying toward the house. Back door, Jack said quickly. Go to Joe's. More vehicles appeared on the road, sleek black SUVs mixing with local news vans. Their quiet sanctuary was under siege. Ms. St. Clair, voices called from outside. Jack Morrison, can we get a statement? Emma clung tighter to Caroline. Don't let them take you away. The kitchen phone rang. Jack's sister Alice, who lived 2 towns over. Jack, you're all over the news. Mom's having a fit. What were you thinking, harboring... He hung up mid-sentence as someone knocked on the door. Through the window, he could see more cars arriving, more cameras. The sound of helicopter blades chopped through the air above their farmhouse. Caroline stood, still holding Emma. No more running. No more hiding. She looked at Jack, her eyes full of determination. They want a story? Let's give them one. She walked to the front door and opened it. Camera flashes exploded as reporters surged forward. Miss St. Clair, why did you run from your wedding? Mr. Morrison, did you know who she was when you took her in? Is it true you're suffering from mental health issues, Miss St. Clair? Caroline's voice cut through the chaos, clear and strong. My name is Caroline St. Clair, and yes, I left. My wedding. I left because I was being forced into a marriage that would have destroyed everything I am. The reporters fell silent, cameras rolling. I'm an art therapist. I help children heal through creative expression. Bradley Thompson and my family wanted to end that work, to turn me into something I'm not. They planned to have me committed to a psychiatric facility after the wedding, to make me compliant. Jack moved to her side, his hand finding hers. Emma stayed tucked against Caroline's other side, facing the cameras bravely. Here, with Jack and Emma, I found something real, something honest. And if you want to know why America's so-called perfect bride ran away, maybe start by asking why a woman's mental health only becomes questionable when she stands up for herself. A familiar black town car pulled up, and Bradley Thompson himself stepped out, his handsome face arranged in a mask of concern. Caroline, darling, he called, playing to the cameras. We've been so worried. Let's get you the help you need. But Caroline stood her ground, squeezing Jack's hand. I don't need help, Bradley. I need you to understand that your perfect society wedding isn't going to happen. Not now, not ever. The cameras swung between them like spectators at a tennis match. Bradley's practiced smile never wavered. You're not well, sweetheart. Living on a farm, playing mother to some widower's child. This isn't you. No, Caroline said quietly. This is exactly who I am. Who I've always been, when you weren't trying to change me. Emma stepped forward suddenly, her small voice carrying clearly in the tense silence. You're the bad man from her nightmares, the one who wanted to lock her up because she helps kids like me. Bradley's smile slipped for just a moment, a flicker of his true nature showing through. The cameras caught it all, his clenched jaw, his cold eyes, the way he looked at Emma like she was something stuck to his shoe. Touching, he said, his voice dripping with disdain. But this little fantasy is over. Caroline, your father's lawyers are on their way. It's time to come home. The word home hung in the air, and Caroline looked at the farmhouse behind her, at the garden where she and Emma grew vegetables, at the porch where she and Jack had first kissed, at the kitchen window where they made pancakes in the morning sun. I am home, she said simply, and I have proof of everything. The threats, the plans for my institutionalization, all of it. Want to see how that plays on the evening news, Bradley? For the first time, Uncertainty flickered across his perfect features. In that moment, surrounded by cameras, the power dynamic shifted. Caroline St. Clair was no longer a runaway bride having a breakdown. She was a woman fighting for her freedom, and America loves an underdog. The arrival of Caroline's parents brought a new level of chaos to the farm. Their helicopter landed in the backfield, scattering the chickens and flattening a section of corn. Richard and Margaret St. Clair emerged like royalty descending among peasants, their designer clothes and perfect posture a stark contrast to the rural setting. "Really, Caroline?" Her mother's voice dripped disapproval. "Was all this drama necessary? Think of what you're doing to the family name." They'd moved. The confrontation inside, away from the cameras, but the tension filled every corner of the farmhouse kitchen. Legal documents covered the table, papers demanding Caroline's return, threats of conservatorship, psychiatric evaluations ordered by the court. "The family name?" Caroline laughed bitterly. "That's all you've ever cared about. Not me, not my work, not my happiness." "Your happiness?" Richard St. Clair's voice boomed through the small space. "We gave you everything. The best schools, the finest opportunities, a perfect match in Bradley." "Perfect?" Caroline's voice shook. "He wanted to have me committed." "For your own good," her mother interjected smoothly. "You were becoming difficult. These common pursuits, this obsession with teaching art to underprivileged children. Those children needed me," Caroline interrupted. "I was making a real difference in their lives." Emma, who had been watching silently from the corner, suddenly spoke. "Up. Caroline taught me how to draw my feelings when I'm sad about my mom. She helps people." Margaret St. Clair looked at Emma as if she'd just noticed a stain on her designer suit. "And who might you be?" "I'm Emma Morrison. Caroline's going to be my new mom." The silence that followed was deafening. Jack stepped forward, placing a protective hand on Emma's shoulder. "Mr. and Mrs. St. Clair," he said quietly, "your daughter isn't just playing house here. She's found a place where she can be herself, do the work she loves." "Work?" Richard scoffed. "Playing with finger paints isn't work. The St. Clair Foundation uses charity as a tax write-off." Caroline finished. "I wanted to make real change, not just pose for photos at galas." Bradley, who had been watching from the doorway, chose this moment to step in. "Caroline, darling, you're upset, confused. Let us help you." He reached for her arm, but Caroline stepped back, bumping into Jack. Without hesitation, Jack moved to stand between them. "Don't touch her," he said, his voice low but firm. Bradley's practiced smile turned cold. "This is a family matter, Mr. Morrison. I suggest you remember your place." "My place?" Jack's eyes narrowed. "My place is beside the woman I love, protecting her from people who want to break her spirit." "Love!" Margaret's laugh was like breaking glass. "What could a farmer possibly offer a St. Clair?" "Freedom," Caroline said simply. "Respect. Real love, not a business arrangement disguised as marriage." She picked up the legal documents from the table, holding them up. "You want to talk about family matters? Let's talk about these. Commitment papers already signed and dated for after the honeymoon. Power of attorney documents giving Bradley control over my medical decisions. Were you ever going to tell me about these?" Her father's face reddened. "You weren't supposed to see those." "No, I wasn't. Just like I wasn't supposed to see the memo about shutting down the community center's art therapy program, or the documents transferring my trust fund to Bradley's control upon marriage." Emma tugged at Caroline's hand. "Show them your special folder." Caroline smiled down at her, then reached for a thick manila envelope on the counter. "Evidence, every threat, every manipulation, every plan to fix me. Copies are already with 3 different lawyers and 1 very interested journalist." "You wouldn't dare," her mother gasped. "Think of the scandal." "I'm done thinking about scandals. I'm done being the perfect St. Clair daughter." Caroline's voice grew stronger. "I'm choosing my own family now." Bradley stepped forward, his mask finally slipping. You stupid girl. Do you think some dirt-poor farmer and his brat are worth throwing away everything we built? The slap echoed through the kitchen. Everyone froze, staring at Margaret St. Clair's reddening cheek where Caroline's hand had struck. "Don't you ever," Caroline said, her voice shaking with rage, "speak about my family that way again." Emma ran to Caroline, wrapping her arms around her waist. Jack moved to stand beside them, a united front against the power and wealth trying to tear them apart. Richard St. Clair studied them for a long moment, something unreadable crossing his face. "You're really choosing this? This simple life?" "I'm choosing love," Caroline said firmly. "I'm choosing purpose over privilege. And if you ever want to be part of my life again, you'll need to accept that." The silence stretched, broken only by the distant sound of news helicopters still circling the farm. Finally, Margaret spoke, her voice ice-cold. "You'll regret this, Caroline. When the cameras leave and reality sets in, you'll remember who you really are." Caroline looked around the kitchen, at the drawings Emma had proudly displayed on the fridge, at the worn family photos showing generations of Morrisons working this land, at Jack's steady presence beside her. "I know exactly who I am," she said. "For the first time in my life, I truly know." The trust fund papers sat on the kitchen table like a landmine. $20 million, Caroline's inheritance, held in trust until her 30th birthday, or her wedding day. The choice seemed simple on paper. Sign her rights over to Bradley and save the farm, or stay true to herself and watch Jack lose everything he'd worked for. "You have 24 hours, Bradley's lawyer had said, placing his card on top of the papers. "After that, the offer expires, and we proceed with the conservatorship hearing." Now, in the quiet of evening, Caroline sat on the porch swing, watching. Emma chased fireflies in the yard. Jack settled beside her, the old swing creaking familiar welcome. "I know what you're thinking," he said softly, "and the answer is no. Jack, the farm isn't worth your freedom." He took her hand, his calloused fingers gentle against her skin. "We'll figure something out." Emma's laughter floated across the yard as she caught a firefly, its light glowing between her cupped hands. "Caroline, look, it's like tiny stars." Caroline smiled, but there were tears in her eyes. "She's already lost one mother. I can't let her lose her home, too." "You're talking like we've lost already?" Jack's voice held a determination she hadn't heard before. "But look around. The whole town's behind us." He wasn't exaggerating. All day, neighbors had been dropping by with casseroles, offering support, sharing their own stories of standing up to bullies with money and power. Mary Chen had organized a petition. Joe had started a social media campaign that was gaining national attention. "Did you see the latest post?" Jack pulled out his phone, showing her Joe's update. Local kids Caroline had taught at the community center were sharing their stories, their artwork, their testimonials about how she'd changed their lives. "My brother's construction company posted this an hour ago," Mary called from the garden gate, walking up with her tablet. "They're offering Jack a consulting contract. Seems they need someone who knows about sustainable farming practices for their new green building initiative." Caroline stared at the job offer. The salary wouldn't save the farm overnight, but it would keep the wolves from the door. "Mary, I don't know what to say. Say you'll help me convince this stubborn man to take it," Mary smiled. "Sarah always said his pride was his worst enemy." Emma ran up, releasing her firefly. "Miss Mary, did you bring the special thing?" Mary pulled a folder from her bag. "Sure did, sweetheart. Fresh from the printer." Inside were adoption papers, already filled out with Caroline's name in the space. "For Mother." "Emma found the forms online," Mary explained. "Asked me to help her get them ready. She said, and I quote, 'If Bradley wants Caroline to sign papers, these are the only ones that matter.'" Caroline pulled Emma into her lap, heart so full it hurt. "Oh, honey, you don't have to sign them now," Emma said quickly. "But I thought, maybe someday when you're ready." Jack touched the papers gently. "Emma, this is a big thing to ask." "No," Caroline interrupted. "It's not big at all. It's the easiest choice I've ever made. She reached for a pen, but Jack caught her hand. Wait! Are you sure? This would mean giving up everything, your inheritance, your family connections. Jack Morrison. Caroline turned to face him. Fully, when are you going to understand? I'm not giving up anything that matters. This farm, this life, this family, this is everything I ever wanted, but was afraid to wish for. Emma bounced excitedly. Does this mean you're staying forever? Even if the bad people try to make you leave? Before Caroline could answer, a car pulled up in the driveway. Joe stepped out, waving a handful of papers. Sorry to interrupt, but you all need to see this. He hurried up to the porch. Remember those files Caroline kept? The ones proving what Bradley and her family were. Planning? They nodded. Well, somebody leaked them to the press. It's all over the internet. The commitment papers, the threats, everything. And guess what? 3 other wealthy families have come forward with similar stories about the Thompsons. Seems Bradley has a history of managing strong-willed women. Through medical manipulation. Caroline's hand flew to her mouth. The other art therapy teachers, the ones who disappeared from the program, all married to Thompson business associates, Joe confirmed, and all mysteriously developed nervous conditions requiring institutional care. Jack stood up. This changes everything. With this kind of scandal, Bradley's family is already doing damage control, Joe said. They're offering a settlement, complete control of your trust fund, Caroline, no marriage required. They just want you to stay quiet. The trust fund papers on the kitchen table suddenly seemed less threatening. Caroline looked at Emma's adoption papers, then at Jack, then at the supportive faces of their friends. You know what? She picked up Bradley's lawyer's card and tore it in half. Some things are worth more than money. She reached for the adoption papers instead, signing her name with a flourish that felt like breaking chains. There, she said, hugging Emma close. Now, that's what I call a real investment in the future. The new property deed arrived on a Tuesday morning, printed on crisp legal paper that seemed out of place in the farmhouse kitchen. Caroline stared at it in disbelief while Jack made breakfast, the smell of coffee mixing with fresh hope. I still can't believe my grandmother did this, she said, touching the document reverently. All those years, she had a separate trust set up in my name, completely independent from my parents' control. She must have known you'd need it someday, Jack said, flipping a pancake. Emma, honey, set the table, please. Emma carefully arranged plates around the deed. Does this mean we get to keep the farm? It means more than that, sweetheart. Caroline pulled her close. It means we can expand it. Make it everything your dad always dreamed of. The lawyers had confirmed it yesterday. Caroline's grandmother, the quiet rebellion of the St. Clair family, had left her granddaughter a separate inheritance. Land holdings, investment accounts, and most importantly, complete autonomy from the St. Clair Empire. A knock at the door interrupted their celebration. Bradley stood there, his perfect appearance somehow diminished since the scandal broke. Caroline, he said stiffly, we need to talk. Jack moved protectively toward them, but Caroline touched his arm. It's okay. I'm not afraid anymore. She stepped onto the porch, leaving the door open so Jack and Emma could hear everything. Bradley looked uncomfortable in the morning sun, like a creature used to boardrooms and shadows. The board is concerned, he said without preamble. Your little exposé has cost us 3 major contracts. My truth, you mean? Caroline's voice was steel wrapped in silk. About how you and my father planned to drug me into submission after the wedding. Bradley's facade cracked slightly. It was for your own good. You were becoming difficult. No, I was becoming myself. Caroline gestured to the farm, to Jack and Emma watching from the doorway. This is who I am, Bradley. The real me, not the porcelain doll you wanted to lock away. The Thompson Group is prepared to make a very generous offer. Save it. Caroline pulled out her grandmother's letter, the one that had arrived with the trust documents. My grandmother saw through you years ago. That's why she set up the separate trust. She knew I'd need an escape route someday. Bradley's face darkened. That old woman was always interfering. That old woman, Caroline cut in, taught me my first art lesson. She believed in me when everyone else was trying to turn me into something I'm not. And now she's given me the means to help other women break free from men like you. What are you talking about? Caroline smiled. And for the first time, Bradley looked truly worried. The community center, I bought it yesterday. We're expanding the art therapy program, adding counseling services for women in crisis. Seems there are a lot of society wives out there looking for escape routes of their own. You wouldn't dare. Watch me. Caroline's voice was pure conviction. Every woman you've tried to manage into submission, they're coming forward. Your perfect reputation is already in tatters. Leave now while you still have something to salvage. Emma appeared at Caroline's side, small hand slipping into hers. My daddy says bullies only have power if you're scared of them. Bradley looked at their joined hands, at Jack's steady presence in the doorway, at the farm stretching out behind them. For a moment, something like regret crossed his face. You could have had everything, he said quietly. No, Bradley, I have everything right here. He turned without another word, his expensive shoes crunching on gravel as he walked to his waiting car. They watched until he disappeared down the long driveway, taking the last shadows of Caroline's old life with him. Inside, the property deed still lay on the kitchen table, but now Jack placed another document beside it, papers for a new business partnership. The Morrison St. Clair Agricultural Education Center, combining sustainable farming with art therapy and community outreach. You really want to do this? He asked. Start something completely new. Caroline picked up a crayon drawing Emma had made. Their little family, standing in front of a big red barn, surrounded by happy children and growing things. Not completely new, she said softly, just growing something that was always meant to be. Emma tugged at their hands. Can I help paint the new sign? I already know what colors we need. Jack and Caroline exchanged looks over her head, sharing a moment of perfect understanding. Sometimes breaking free means building something better in the space where chains used to be. The national news vans had been replaced by a steady stream of visitors with stories of their own. Women in designer clothes and perfect makeup would arrive at the farm looking nervous, then leave hours later with lighter steps and determined expressions. Caroline sat in her new office, a converted corner of the barn with huge windows overlooking the fields, reading emails from across the country. The headline on her computer screen read, Runaway Bride Sparks Revolution in High Society. More women speaking out against coercive control. Another one just arrived, Jack said from the doorway. Through the window they could see a sleek car pulling up, a well-dressed woman helping her young daughter out of the back seat. That's Margaret Whitman, Caroline said, recognizing the banking heiress from her old social circle. I heard rumors her husband was like Bradley. Emma looked up from her art table in the corner. Should I get my special crayons? The ones that help people draw their feelings. Good thinking, sweetheart. Caroline smiled at her daughter. The adoption had become official last week. Sometimes colors say things words can't. The story had exploded beyond their control. What started as a scandal about one runaway bride had unveiled a pattern in high society. Women being controlled through medical gaslighting, financial manipulation, and family pressure. The Thompson Group's stock had plummeted as more victims came forward. Did you see the latest? Mary burst in, waving her tablet. 3 more families have pulled their development contracts from the St. Clairs. Your father's company is hemorrhaging clients. Caroline felt a twinge of sadness for her father, but it was overshadowed by determination. Maybe it's time they learned that treating women like property isn't good business. Outside, Margaret Whitman was taking in the sight of the farm. The new sign announcing the Morrison St. Clair Center, the children's art displayed proudly on the barn walls, the peaceful rhythm of rural life. Ms. Whitman? Emma had slipped out to greet their visitors, her crayon box clutched to her chest. Would you like to draw with me while my mom talks to your mom? Margaret's daughter lit up, and both women's faces softened at the simple kindness in Emma's offer. "The network wants to do a follow-up story," Mary continued. "They're calling it the Cedar Grove Revolution, how one small town stood up to big money and won." Jack wrapped an arm around Caroline's shoulders. "You know what amazes me most? How the whole town just accepted you as one of their own. No questions asked." "That's because she is one of us," Joe called from where he was helping unload art supplies. "Money can't buy the kind of community you build with love and trust." The Thompson family had tried to fight back, launching a PR campaign about traditional values and family stability. But their carefully crafted image crumbled in the face of real stories from real women. Caroline's phone buzzed. Another message from her mother. They'd been coming daily since the scandal broke, shifting from anger to pleading to, finally, something like understanding. "Dear Caroline," this one read, "I saw your interview about the art therapy program. It reminded me of when you were little, always drawing, always trying to help others. I didn't listen then. I'm listening now. Love, Mom." "You okay?" Jack asked softly, noticing her expression. "Yeah." Caroline smiled through tears. "Just realizing that sometimes choosing your own path helps others find their way too." Emma returned, leading Margaret's daughter by the hand. "Mum, can we show them the sunflower field? Sarah says she's never seen real flowers growing before." The little girl, Sarah, looked up at her mother with hopeful eyes. Margaret Whitman knelt down, straightening her daughter's dress with trembling hands. "Perhaps," she said hesitantly, "perhaps we could stay a while, learn more about everything." Caroline recognized the look in Margaret's eyes, the same desperate hope for escape she'd felt months ago. "Of course," she said warmly. "Emma, why don't you show Sarah your special spot in the garden, the one where you go to feel brave?" As the girls ran off together, Caroline caught Jack's eye. They'd need to expand the program again, add more resources. But looking at Margaret's face, seeing the first hints of freedom taking root, she knew every sacrifice had been worth it. The media might call it a revolution, but to Caroline, it was simpler than that. It was just love, winning over fear, truth, breaking through lies, and a small farm in Cedar Grove becoming a lighthouse for lost souls seeking their way home. The adoption papers arrived on Emma's 9th birthday. Caroline had planned to make it a surprise, but Emma found the envelope first, her morning excitement for presents leading her straight to the drawer where it was hidden. "Is this real?" Emma's voice trembled as she held up the official document. "You're really going to be my mom forever, ever?" Caroline knelt beside her, heart full to bursting. "If that's what you want, sweetheart, these papers just make official what we already know in our hearts." "Dad!" Emma called out, running to find Jack in the kitchen. "Look what Caroline got me for my birthday." Jack was just finishing the special birthday pancakes, chocolate chip with whipped cream faces, a tradition Sarah had started. He caught Caroline's eye over Emma's head, his own eyes suspiciously bright. "Best birthday present ever," he said softly. The farm had transformed over the past months. The old barn now housed their growing community center, its walls brightened by children's artwork. The fields flourished with both traditional crops and new gardens designed for therapy sessions. Even the farmhouse had expanded, with a new wing under construction to accommodate their growing programs. Mary arrived early for the birthday party, carrying a special gift. "Emma, honey, look what I found in the music store archives." It was a photograph from one of Sarah's recitals, showing her at the piano, young and beautiful. Mary had framed it alongside a recent photo of Emma at her own recital, the resemblance striking. "You play just like her," Mary said gently. "And now you have two moms watching over you, one from heaven and one right here." Emma hugged the frame close. "Can we put it in the special place, Caroline, with the other family pictures?" The special place was a wall in their living room that told their family's story. Photos of the Morrisons through generations on the farm, pictures of Sarah, recent editions of Caroline and Emma working in the garden, Jack teaching them both about caring for the horses, their whole new family together, As they hung the new frame, a car pulled up outside. Caroline recognized her mother's driver. "Emma," she said carefully, "would it be okay if your grandmother joined your birthday party?" Emma's eyes widened. "You mean—" Margaret St. Clair stepped out of the car, looking different than she had during their last confrontation. Gone was the rigid society matron. This woman seemed softer somehow, carrying a wrapped package and wearing a simple sundress. "I wasn't sure I'd be welcome," she said hesitantly, "but I couldn't miss my granddaughter's birthday." The word granddaughter hung in the air like a peace offering. Emma, always quicker to forgive than adults, broke the tension by running forward. "Did you know I'm getting 2 presents today? Caroline's going to be my real mom, and I got a picture of my first mom too." Margaret knelt, something she would never have done in her designer clothes months ago. "Would you show me? I'd love to hear about both your moms." Inside, the house filled with guests. Not society people, but real friends. Joe brought his famous barbecue. Mary led the kids in musical games. The Thompson name wasn't mentioned once. "Your father wanted to come," Margaret said quietly to Caroline during a quiet moment. "He's struggling with everything, but he's trying to understand." Caroline watched Emma showing her grandmother how to feed the chickens, teaching her the names she'd given each one. "Understanding takes time. We have plenty of that now." Jack joined them, slipping his arm around Caroline's waist. "Speaking of time, I was thinking maybe we could use some of that understanding to plan another celebration. Something small, just family and close friends." He pulled out a simple ring, nothing like the elaborate diamond Caroline had thrown away months ago. This one was carved from wood, inlaid with tiny pieces of mother-of-pearl. "Emma helped me make it," he said. "Well, supervised might be a better word." Caroline looked at the ring, at the farm around them, at Emma teaching her grandmother about gentle eggs gathering, at Mary setting up the piano for the birthday concert, at Joe manning the grill and telling stories, at all the pieces of her new life fitting perfectly together. "Yes," she said simply, "yes to everything." Emma came running back, her grandmother following more sedately. "Did you ask her? Did she say yes? Can I be the flower girl?" Jack laughed. "How long have you been helping plan this?" "Since forever." Emma hugged them both. "I knew you were meant to be together, just like in my stories." Margaret watched them, her society mask cracking further. "You know, Caroline, I think for the first time I'm seeing you truly happy. It just looks different than I expected." "The best things usually do," Caroline replied, holding her new family close. The ring on her finger caught the sunlight. It's handmade beauty, a testament to love's ability to transform the simplest things into treasure. The simple gold ring caught the morning light as Caroline helped Emma try on her flower girl dress. No designer labels this time. Mary and the local sewing circle had made it together, each stitch sewn with love and stories about Sarah. "Mom?" Emma still said the word carefully, like a precious gift. "Can I add some sunflowers to my basket? They're Dad's favorite, and they're happy flowers." "Of course, sweetheart." Caroline smoothed the dress's yellow sash. "This wedding isn't about impressing anyone. It's about what makes us happy." The contrast with her previous wedding preparations couldn't have been starker. Instead of a team of professional planners, the whole town had pitched in. Joe was smoking brisket for the reception. Mary had organized a choir of her piano students. The ceremony would be held right here on the farm, in the sunflower field now in full bloom. "Caroline?" Her mother's voice came from the doorway. "Do you have a moment?" Margaret St. Clair looked different these days. The designer suits had given way to casual clothes. Her perfect makeup softened. Weekly visits to the farm had gradually thawed the ice between them. "Emma, honey, why don't you show Grandma how you practiced your flower petal toss?" As Emma demonstrated her technique, spreading petals in careful arcs, Caroline noticed her mother's hands fidgeting with something. "I brought you this," Margaret said softly, holding out a small velvet box. "It was your grandmother's. She wore it at her wedding. The first one, before she married into the St. Clair family." when she still lived on her family's farm. Inside was a delicate pearl pendant, on a simple chain. Caroline touched it gently, remembering her grandmother's stories about her life before society swept her away. She always said her first wedding was her real one. Margaret continued, I didn't understand then. I do now. Emma peered at the necklace. It looks like the moon. Can I help you put it on, Mom? As Emma carefully fastened the clasp, Margaret wiped away tears. Your father wanted to come today, but it's okay, Caroline said. He'll understand when he's ready, like you did. Outside, they could hear the activity building. Local farmers had brought their trucks, forming a circle around the sunflower field. Children strung lights between them, creating a natural cathedral for the evening ceremony. Jack was banned from the house until the wedding. Tradition, Joe had insisted with a wink, but they could see him helping set up chairs, stopping often to chat and laugh with neighbors. Tell me honestly, Margaret said suddenly, are you happy? Really happy? Caroline watched Jack lift a little girl so she could hang a paper lantern, watched Emma twirl in her handmade dress, thought of their growing family, not just by blood or law, but by choice and love. Happier than I ever knew was possible, she answered. A knock at the door revealed Mary carrying a guitar case. Ready for the music rehearsal? The kids are so excited to play for your first dance. Instead of a professional orchestra, Caroline and Jack had asked Mary's students to perform. The children had worked for weeks arranging their favorite songs, determined to make it perfect. Just a minute, Emma said, running to her room. She returned with a framed photo, Sarah at her own wedding, radiant in a simple white dress. Can we put this by the ceremony space, so both my mums can be there? The three women watched Emma carefully carry the photo outside, her dress rustling importantly. She's so much like Sarah, Mary said softly, the same gentle heart. And like Caroline, Margaret added, the same quiet strength. Caroline touched her grandmother's pendant, watching her daughter, arrange the photo just so among the sunflowers. Tomorrow, she would walk through those same flowers to marry Jack, surrounded not by society photographers and business associates, but by true friends and chosen family. No designer dress this time. She'd chosen a simple white sundress that would let her dance freely. No elaborate catering, just good food made with love. No orchestrated photo opportunities, just real moments captured by friends. Need any help? Joe called from outside. The arch is ready for decorating. Emma came running back. Come see, Mom. We used the scarves from art therapy to make it colorful, and Dad found these old wind chimes that sound like fairy bells. Caroline took her mother's hand. Want to help us decorate? Margaret looked at the casual gathering outside. Farmers in work boots, children running with streamers, a community coming together to celebrate love in its purest form. I'd like that very much, she said, and followed her daughter and granddaughter into the sunlight. 1 year later, the Morrison St. Clair farm was hosting its biggest gathering yet. Sunflowers and summer flowers bloomed in abundance, their colors echoing in the children's artwork displayed along the barn walls. A new sign hung proudly, First, Annual Cedar Grove Arts and Agriculture Festival. Caroline stood in the doorway of their expanded farmhouse, watching the scene unfold. Emma, now 10, was leading art workshops with a confidence that made her heart swell. Jack was giving tractor rides to excited kids, his laugh carrying across the fields. Mary's piano students provided background music from a small stage decorated with twinkling lights. Quite a change from last year's society pages. Her father's voice came from behind her. Richard St. Clair looked different now, more human. Somehow, his corporate armor softened by time and understanding. Dad, Caroline smiled, you made it. Wouldn't miss it. He handed her a newspaper. The headline read, Thompson Group files for bankruptcy amid scandal. Below was a smaller headline. Morrison St. Clair Center launches nationwide program for women's empowerment. You were right, he said quietly. About everything, Bradley, the business practices, what really matters in life. He watched Emma help a younger child with their painting. Your grandmother would be proud. Grandpa! Emma ran over, paint smudged on her cheek. Come see, I'm teaching art just like Mom, and Dad says my sunflowers are growing even better than his. Richard let himself be pulled along, looking slightly overwhelmed but willing to learn. Margaret joined them, comfortable now in jeans and a casual blouse, already asking Emma about her latest projects. Joe appeared at Caroline's side, wiping barbecue sauce from his hands. Look at that, the mighty Richard St. Clair learning about organic farming from his granddaughter. Times sure do change. Speaking of change, Mary added, coming up with her tablet, you should see the registration numbers for next month's programs. Women from across the country all looking for their own fresh start. The farm had become more than they'd dreamed. Beyond the therapy programs and community classes, they'd added transitional housing for women leaving controlling situations. The gardens provided both healing spaces and practical job training. Emma's art classes had inspired a whole youth mentorship program. Caroline! Jack called from across the yard. Honey, come quick, you gotta see this! She followed his voice to find him standing with a young woman she recognized from their support group. Lisa had arrived 6 months ago, fleeing a situation painfully similar to what Caroline had escaped. Now she was holding up an acceptance letter to art school. I did it, Lisa whispered. I actually did it. My ex-husband always said I was wasting my time with art, but he was wrong, Caroline finished, hugging her. They're always wrong about that. The festival continued into evening, lights twinkling in the trees. Children played while their parents talked and laughed. Women who had arrived at the farm broken were now helping newcomers find their strength. The wall between society and simple folk had crumbled, replaced by genuine connections. Jack found Caroline by the sunflower field, where it had all begun a year ago. Emma was nearby, teaching her grandparents the names of her favorite chickens. Happy? He asked, wrapping his arms around her. Caroline leaned back against him, taking in the scene. The farm was thriving, not just with crops but with hope and healing. Their marriage was strong, built on real partnership and understanding. Emma was blossoming, her heart big enough to call 2 mothers her own. Even her parents were learning to see life through new eyes. Remember what Emma said when she was trying to explain our story to her class? Caroline smiled at the memory. Jack chuckled. That it was like a fairy tale, but better because it's real. Smart girl, our daughter. They stood together, watching the sun set on their created world. From somewhere in the garden, a child's laugh rang out. The sound of joy unrestricted by society's expectations. A year ago, Caroline had run from a false dream into authentic happiness. Now she was helping others find their own way home. Mom! Dad! Emma called. They're about to start the lantern release. Hundreds of paper lanterns rose into the darkening sky, each one carrying hopes and dreams skyward. Caroline held her family close, watching the lights rise. You know what? The best part is, she said softly. What's that? This isn't the end of the story, it's just the beginning. As if to prove her point, a car pulled up the driveway, another woman arriving with nothing but hope and the courage to change her life. Emma was already running to greet her, ready to show their newest guest that happy endings don't just happen in fairy tales.